So, today we're diving into something pretty incredible. It's a method that's given a voice to literally thousands of non-speakers, letting them communicate for the very first time. But it's also at the absolute center of a huge, bitter controversy. It's pitting parents and the spellers themselves against the very institutions that are supposed to help them. This is the spelling controversy.
And at the heart of this whole thing, you have people like Lily. For them, this isn't just some academic debate about a technique. No, this is about their life, their autonomy, their education, their very personhood. And she just nails it right here. The whole conflict boils down to one really devastating question. Who is actually talking?
To really get what's at stake, let's look at the story of one family. So there's a mom named Katie, and she had pretty much lost hope that her son, Houston, would ever be able to truly communicate. And then, just as he's about to finish high school, everything changes.
Can you just imagine the joy? All of a sudden, Houston is spelling out these incredibly complex thoughts. He's talking about feeling like he's falling out of the bottom of his feet, or having alternating blindness. He even explained that he flaps his hands just so he knows where they are in space. I mean, his rich inner world was finally open. So of course his mom was ecstatic and wanted to share this huge breakthrough with his school.
But instead of a celebration, what Katie got was a brick wall. She's in this meeting with like triple the usual number of staff, and the director of speech services for the whole county leans forward, points right at the letterboard, and just shuts it all down.
So Katie was just baffled. I mean, what exactly didn't they support? Pointing? The alphabet? Why would a school, of all places, be so aggressively against the student who finally found a way to communicate? And that's the mystery we're unpacking here.
Well, it turns out the school wasn't just making this up on their own. Their position was coming straight from the top, from a really powerful national organization that basically sets all the rules for speech and language therapy in the entire country.
So, let me introduce you to ASHA. That's the American Speech Language Hearing Association. These are the folks who certify professionals in the field. If you want a job or you need to bill insurance, you need their stamp of approval. Their official position statements carry enormous weight, and for a place like a school, they're pretty much treated as law.
And ASHA's position on this? It's crystal clear. They warn against using these methods. Now, their core arguments are right here. They question who's really authoring the words, they're worried it makes the speller dependent on a partner, and they claim there's no real scientific proof that it works.
And get this. This isn't just a friendly recommendation. For professionals who actually believe in this method and see it work, going against ASHA's stance means risking their entire career. It's so serious that many speech pathologists are forced to teach spelling under the radar, just so they don't lose their license.
So you're probably asking, why would an organization like ASHA take such a hard line? Well, to understand that, we've got to look back at a really painful history that basically poisoned the well for any kind of assisted communication for decades. Okay, so back in the early 90s, this method called facilitated communication, or FC, shows up. The key thing here is that it involved a facilitator physically touching the speller's hand or wrist. But this led to absolute disaster. Untrained facilitators started producing false accusations of sexual abuse, which led to these devastating court cases and a huge media firestorm. The whole tool was just completely villainized.
And this is where it gets so frustrating for the people who support the new methods. They argue that modern techniques, like S2C, that's spelling to communicate, and RPM, the rapid prompting method, were specifically designed to be touch-free for this very reason. But ASHA's official statement just lumps all of them together with the old, discredited one. It's like they're punishing a whole new generation for the failures of the past.
Okay, so what is the case for spelling? Well, the proponents argue that ASHA's position is completely ignoring a huge, growing body of evidence. You just have to be willing to actually look at it.
This slide really lays out the two sides perfectly. ASHA says there's a lack of evidence. Proponents point to over 100 peer-reviewed studies. ASHA questions who's really doing the writing. Proponents bring up eye-tracking studies that show the speller's eyes move to the letter before their finger does.
And let's be super clear about that number. We're not talking about a couple of little anecdotes here. We're talking about more than 100 peer-reviewed studies.
And let me quickly break down how one of those big studies worked. Researchers at the University of Virginia used eye-tracking technology, and what they found was a really clear sequence of events. First, the speller's eye locks onto the letter they want. Then, and only then, their hand and finger follow that gaze to the board. This is a direct challenge to the idea that a facilitator is secretly guiding them. But you know, beyond all the lab studies, parents say the real proof is in the content of what their kids are spelling.
Spellers are relaying stuff that their parents could never, ever invent. One speller told his mom he didn't realize he even had hands. Another one, John Paul, was suddenly writing this amazing poetry and solving math problems his mom couldn't do. These aren't just words. They are unique, independent thoughts.
But this is where the story takes a really unexpected turn. The unique content of these messages is leading to another, much more hidden conflict. And this time, it's a war within the spelling community itself. And it's all about a topic so controversial, a lot of people are afraid to even say the word.
So it turns out many parents and teachers report that they experience a telepathic connection with the spellers. But when they try to talk about it, online or at conferences, they say they get shushed. There's this massive fear that talking about telepathy is going to destroy their fight for scientific credibility and just hurt the entire movement.
And get this, some families don't even use the letterboards anymore. There's Caroline and her son Kyle, who communicate through lucid dreams. In this dream state, Kyle can speak perfectly clearly to his mom, giving her messages, telling her what he needs. He's even written entire albums of music this way.
Caroline uses this really cool metaphor to explain it. She sees our normal, conventional language as the first and narrowest bandwidth. The second bandwidth is for creative stuff like music and art, but the third, she says, is a much wider field. It's a collective consciousness, and that's where things like telepathy and this deeper connection are possible.
And all of this brings us to the final, and maybe the most profound part of this whole story. The real controversy might not be about the spelling method at all.
I mean, think about it for a second. What if the resistance isn't really to the how, but to the what? These spellers are consistently delivering messages that challenge our whole materialistic view of the world. They talk about unity, consciousness, and how worried they are for the planet. To accept their words as real is to accept a version of reality that many people are just not ready for.
So in the end, the spellers are offering a perspective that could fundamentally change how we understand the mind, how we understand communication, and reality itself. And it leaves us with a pretty big question. To truly hear them, is it not the spellers but the rest of us who have to change?